Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about some new cars coming in the pipeline for 2021 and into 2022. So let's start with the car that we know for sure is coming based off of what the dealer has been saying. And that is the Subaru BRZ, also known as the Toyota 86. If you're watching this, you probably already know the backstory for this, but for those that don't, this car was designed as a joint development between Scion, which eventually dissolved into Toyota, and Subaru. The car was engineered with the desire to be one of the best driver's cars that was affordable to the masses. It made its way into production in 2012, which is hard to believe that this car is approaching 9 years old already. Overall, the car sold relatively well, especially with a sports car market that is dwindling. And as expected, it became loved by car tuners as well as enthusiasts looking for Mazda Miata alternative. It had a sublime chassis that communicated really well with its drivers when pushed around and at the limit while still being affordable, somewhat practical, and with its hatchback design and foldable rear small back seats and even decent fuel economy to break into the daily driver's market while still maintaining its overall appearance and functionality of a sports car. Fast forward to 2021, and Subaru has confirmed the next generation is coming. So let's go over some of the points that we know so far. Let's go over the headline news, which most folks were interested in, and that is the engine. The engine gets a bump from a 2-liter displacement up to a 2.4-liter displacement, giving it a horsepower and torque boost in both categories. This is probably roughly going to be around a 15 to 20% boost in power from the previous generation in both torque and horsepower categories. The BRZ and the lineup of Subaru sports cars in general have a very distinct sound that comes from that boxer engine. I'm very excited to hear what that car sounds like once we hear it on the roads. Next is the drivetrain. So not too much of an update here, but that is because the formula works. It is basically a classic rear wheel drive and front engine along with a low center of gravity with a 50-50 weight distribution between the front and the rear, plus an overall low amount of weight, which I believe the car is still under 3,000 pounds. And that creates what ends up being a winning formula. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think, Subaru and Toyota were great in kind of keeping all those key points there for this new update. And now let's talk about my favorite highlight of this car, and that is the transmission. Yes, the Subaru BRZ and Toyota 86 still comes with a manual transmission. Now, why is that a big deal? I think it's because it is part of a very small percentage of cars that you can buy brand new from the factory that still have a manual transmission available. It does also have a 6-speed automatic with flappy paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. If you do want to go to that more chill route, as a daily commuter while you're sitting in traffic, totally fine. There is a manual transmission for the more hardcore enthusiasts. So I think it's really, really great that they still have that manual transmission available for the sports car enthusiasts. Next is the interior features. And from what we've seen so far in the pictures, I think this is the biggest jump from the previous generation, even more so than the power. The car still features the normal standards in this section, which is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto infotainment systems integrated into the vehicle that still allow connectivity to your cell phone. I think with an upgrade to a larger screen, that is clearly a trend that we're seeing in the marketplace. Check out Tesla. Next, comes that digital instrument cluster. It has a customizable cluster, which allows you to change the appearance of what you are looking at while you're driving in case you want to see different information depending on what you're doing. I'm not 100% sure exactly what the different views are, but I imagine that it would be something between like a normal mode, a sport mode, and a track mode. Track mode, you'll be focused more on G meters, engine temperatures, and better visibility on your total speed versus a more normal mode, which would probably show things like navigation as well as your current miles per gallon. And lastly, let's take a step back and look at the overall look and appearance of the outside of the vehicle. Overall, I think the refresh looks pretty good. The dimensions overall look to be similar to the last car. The taillights kind of look like they're from an Acura NSX. Not exactly a bad thing. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I always say. In the photos of what we've seen, there will be definitely distinguishable differences between the BRZ and the Toyota 86. One thing that I noticed right away is the examples of the headlights seen on both. Subaru has a little bit more of a boxy headlight assembly versus the Toyota 86 has a little bit more of a sleek, narrow design for its headlights. And finally, that leaves us with the overall pluses and the overall minuses of this new car update. So let's go over the pluses. Plus number 1 is the manual is still available with this rare and dying breed. Plus number 2 is a huge, in my opinion, upgrade from the interior standpoint. The original car was more driver-centric with kind of a minimalist type of interior features, interior kind of being an afterthought in my opinion. Here they, I think, have made a good amount of steps forward in trying to make this a little bit more user-friendly and also incorporating technology that is available today in a daily driving sports car, which I think is great. And the key that they're being able to do this without impacting the starting cost too much, I think is very important. So great job Subaru and Toyota for incorporating that technology. And lastly is the aftermarket. One of the biggest pluses about this car is the aftermarket availability across different brands. I think this is a kind of car that likes to be pushed to the limits of what customizing can be and how owners seem to make and create their own unique vehicle. You rarely kind of see a stock BRZ on the roads anymore because people really like to customize them and make them how they want them for their own personal taste. Next, let's talk about the minuses. And the big elephant in the room, and probably the biggest ding on this car, at least from what we know so far, is the lack of a turbocharger. I personally thought that this was one of the opportunities where Subaru and Toyota had a ability to kind of address all the complaints, which 90% of them had to do with the lack of the turbocharger in this model. And I saw this revamp as an opportunity to perhaps implement this into their next model. We've seen this turbocharged version of this boxer engine in the STI, and if there was a turbocharger in a car this light, holy shit would this car fly. I think this has most likely to do with the cost restrictions implementing this across all their production cars, and I think that might have been probably the primary factor on why the turbocharger was not included within this car as standard or available. However, I think overall we can't complain. It's still a sports car at heart and it should still be very, very fun to drive. Just unfortunately, there won't be as much power in it as it could potentially have been if there was a turbocharger. Next is the ride as the next minus. The ride was not obviously one of the most comfortable, and I would say was a bit on the harsh side on potholed and rough surfaces, especially but given that it's a sports car and the nature of the vehicle, given the price bracket, I don't really think that we can complain too much. We for sure knew that the car was not going to ride as well as a Porsche Cayman would. That's one thing that I think we'll see a little bit of an improvement. It is a sports car, so we can't expect it to ride butter smooth. However, the ride was a bit jarring from the times that I've driven it. Well, now that's really everything I wanted to cover from what we know so far from the BRZ 86 vehicle. So now we will have to wait and see how it drives in comparison between the old model and the new one, and more importantly, how it sells in today's market. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you like these kinds of videos a little bit more than to what I've made in the past, please let me know in the comments below. And obviously there are more cars coming out in 2021. So to get us through this harsh winter season, I'm going to attempt to make one video per week on a new car that's coming up in the market. And I will kind of dive and delve into detail about these based off of news that we hear from the automakers themselves. So stay tuned for those upcoming videos. And also, I would really appreciate it if you're watching this, if you would like, subscribe, and most importantly, share with your fellow friend car enthusiasts. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for next time.